JLX is my artist signature, but you can call me Jenny Lynx, and what do you guys think of that for an intro for YouTube? Onto the project, though. I have 2 boxes here owned by my late grandfather. One is an old cigar box from when he used to smoke, and the other is one he actually made. They've both been through a couple of moves and are in need of some cleaning and some treatment. There's a wood finish on this box on the exterior, but something has dripped on it in the past, 20 years or something, and needs some light sanding to get that off. Also, the inside could use, just a little something else. But he made this box, so whatever changes I want to make to it, I'm going to make sure are removable, so that way I'm not actually compromising the integrity of the box itself. The bottom side of the box was never finished and has these giant, knots from the wood in them that could use some wood filler, so I'm thinking of adding a fabric down there. Now, the cigar box is a beautiful wood color. Like, I really love what type of wood this is. I don't know what it is, but it's so pretty. However, it's been beat up and thrown around. There are quite a few gouges in the surface of it that need some wood filler, so unfortunately I think I'm gonna have to restain this box. Hopefully I'll get to keep some of the nice darker color, but we shall see. The inside has this plexiglass top and this shelf for the filter. And I don't know, I just find the bright white of it startling when you open the box. Like, So I will be covering that with something. We're not sure yet. Starting with the box my grandfather made, I'm just gonna do some light sanding real quick and shamelessly plug my mom's handicraftness. She made this mask for the pandemic, but it's also great for when you're sanding. And yes, my Hogwarts house is a Slytherin. But can you really blame me? I mean, it's so dang cute and so comfortable. I started by sanding off the strange, clear substance that was messing with the overall outside texture of the wood, but I wasn't expecting it to kind of take as long as it did. In real time, I was actually jumping back and forth between the 2 boxes as I was working on them, but for simplicity's sake and viewing pleasure, I'm going to show you the process of one box and then the other. Remember to clean your workspace as you go. It makes the cleanup after a project way easier. I tried to think of the inside of the box versus the outside of the box as 2 different portions of the project, so I had to get back out the wood putty to fill some holes on the inside, and I could have done it while the wood putty was out earlier, but I didn't. So I had this idea to make kind of plush velvet fake bottom for this box to just make it a really nice box. I mean, it has the option for a lock. You might as well put something valuable in it if you have a lock. I don't have a lock, but that doesn't mean I can't add the bottom. I chose a beautiful red fabric for this, a fake velvet that actually used to be a pair of children's pants. The pants weren't quite big enough for not having a seam line as part of it, but I managed to stretch and hide it at the very edge of the wood and fabric. So, I don't know. It's not visible unless you're really looking at it. I found hot glue to be perfectly sufficient for attaching both this cushion thing to the pegboard, but also for the fabric, because it dries quickly and it's not like I can sew it to the board anyways. Plus, it makes it easy to remove if I ever need to replace it. The glue doesn't really dry flat though. I mean, it is hot glue, so it adds kind of like footing, if you will, to the fabric, lifting it up away from the wood or cardboard. Actually, I'm not sure what this is. It's pegboard, but in reality, I had to make that backing piece twice because the first time I cut it incorrectly and it was crooked. And then, you know, I tried to fix it by cutting it again with a straight edge this time, and it still didn't cut straight, but then I just was like, you know what, no, we're gonna keep going. I tried to brute force it, but by the time I actually got it straight, it was too small. I decided not to include the footage of me screwing up the first time on that velvet bottom because, well, it really doesn't make for a good video, and also I couldn't seem to stay in frame, so it's not like you can actually see what was happening anyways. All you need to know is that I fricked up! But here's the very satisfying time-lapse of adding linseed oil to all the exposed wood on the inside here, trying to rehydrate it and get it looking nice and golden and shiny and new. I mean, let's face it, this is everybody's favorite part. It's even better on the cigar box though, so stay tuned for that time lapse. After the inside dried properly, I went ahead and added Mod Podge to the bottom so I can get this fabric to stick. And this was really the only piece of fabric that I had that was big enough for the bottom of this box, so that's why I chose this pattern. But you know, you can remove fabric from wood even if it's Mod Podged on, which is why I felt okay using the Mod Podge, because wood, so long as you have oil to rehydrate it afterwards, you can use acetone to break down some glue and things like that, like Mod Podge. So I was able to keep my goal of being able to remove any changes I make to this box, and I'm quite pleased with that. Initially I had cut the fabric close to the edge of the box, but I later come back in and trim it with a sharp blade a little bit further so that way it's not visible while it's sitting on a table. It just makes it look cleaner of a job. A final wipe down and double checking that I've done everything that I wanted to do and removed all of the surface issues. I'm ready to install the fake bottom. Moving on to the cigar box, like I had mentioned before, I swapped back and forth while parts of one box were drying to work on the other, but here's where I started, disposing of the filter. And yes, the sound effect is necessary. It's a requirement. in real time, this took quite a while to wood putty. It was in a lot worse shape than I initially thought, at least the outside was. And I ended up cutting out a ton of footage and speeding up as much of what I decided to keep as I could. But just watch how it becomes a leopard. A leopard of wood putty. It's insane. Like, it looks so weird. I mean, just watch this whole section. I cannot describe the weirdness I feel when I watch this. Alright, edges. That's understandable. I mean, at the edge of anything is going to get banged up eventually. But I underestimated how much wood putty I would actually need. So, here is a magic trick. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, watch. Ta-da! And that's just the lid. I haven't even started on the rest of the box yet. Just watch. It's everywhere. Everything needed wood putty on this thing. At this point, I was sad about not being able to keep the original color. Now we must sand and hopefully bring back some of the color. No, I'm just kidding. That did not help. But I did have to include this hero music because I legitimately was feeling very sad about the exterior of the box. It looked better after sanding it, but I still wasn't entirely happy about how much I had to use. But you know, I can cry while I wait for the glue to dry. There was some felt attached to the bottom of this to begin with, so I'm just re-gluing down the corners since they had begun to lift up. And now, the fabulous part of adding linseed oil to the inside of the box, and just look at this color change. It's so drastic, but it's so pretty. Like, that's the natural color of the wood. I haven't done anything except give it some moisture. I made sure not to miss the little bits at the top that used to hold the filter, that little shelf, before moving on to the outside, where I added some linseed oil before wood staining it because I had no idea how dry this would be on the outside. And forgive my phone camera, I had filmed a small portion of me adding linseed oil just for my records. I made sure to buff in the oil too to make, just to make sure everything was nice and ready for the wood stain. Now my wood stain is very dark. This happens to be the only wood stain I own besides one I had bought after this video. But even if I had a second wood stain color, I probably still would have chosen this one just to help hide how much wood putty I had to use to get it all a nice shape and smooth texture again. In the end, I couldn't quite fully cover the big gouge on the very top of the lid, but I gave it my best effort without drowning the wood, and just kept going and buffed what I had as best as I could. It's not as noticeable anymore, so that makes me happy, but I'm still just a little bit sad that you can kind of see it, and am debating on adding like a removable decoration for the lid or something. By the way, if you're adding wood stain to a project, make sure that you're adding it to the entire visible pieces of that same wood. Like, don't forget the margins and edges. You're doing it purposefully, so you should make it, look purposefully from every angle. You don't want anybody finding patches where you didn't add it. Finally, I can think about what I want to do about that plexiglass top there. I know I just want to cover it, but I need some colors. I need to think about color scheme here. At first I thought the same velvet as the other box, but it was too red. It didn't complement the color of the wood. So I tried something with a texture, but it was still too red. I didn't quite like that. So I thought maybe a dark blue, and that just was not good at all. That did not look good, even in the slightest. So I kept digging, and I found this barely big enough piece of purple velvet. Faux velvet. It complements the wood nicely, I think. So I went ahead with that, and I just used some very poorly taken measurements to get an approximate size piece of stiff cardboard backing. I actually just used the backing of an old sketchbook of mine. You can see me having done color swatches on it before. But I just used the same technique as I used for the other boxes. I just trimmed it down to size and then covered it with the velvet. And that's how they came out. I think they look pretty good now. And, you know, these days, the box with a lock holds my champion amiibos from Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and the cigar box holds the silk scarves my grandmother had. Thank you all so much for watching, and I have more projects planned, such as a cloak, a pirate shirt, more things exciting than a box.